welcome back to Zak Wylde Productions Podcast. I am Zak Wylde.
And I'm Buzz.
And today we are going to be finding out a little bit more about a project that you've been working on.
Yes, it's a project which should be coming out very shortly, in fact.
And it's titled #Survival.
That's correct.
Would you like to tell us a brief synopsis of #Survival?
Well, it's a project, as a writer myself, I've been working on many projects, and this particular one is close to my heart, and I've probably been developing it over the past 2 or 3 years, even though the idea for it probably goes back far, far further than that. I've always been interested in the apocalyptic scenario. I mean, there's so many movies, books, etc. about many different ways that an apocalypse can happen, and I wanted to combine that with lots of the most popular elements that you'll find within stories and films. So you've got an event which causes said apocalypse. By the way, it's set in modern times, so the here and now. I mean, pretty much the here and now. I think we're probably about 5 years from now, you could say. But,
okay, so
but relatively, the timeline is as it is. So the technology and everything is as it is. So it's how an apocalypse would affect technology, life, the general framework of humanity as it stands at the moment. However, I wanted to make sure that how these things occur, how the apocalypse comes about, is, it's not space aliens or anything like that. It's more factual.
So it's something that could realistically happen.
So something that could realistically happen is if you want to call it, the main event. It throws our main character into this scenario, and our main character, if I really wanted to simplify the whole thing, it's about one man's journey. It's a journey. So our main character in the story, his name is Tom, and if you want to simplify the idea of the story, it's basically his journey from getting from A to B. And when he is at A, apocalypse occurs and affects things. It's all about his journey trying to get back to B, which in this instance is his home.
And this is Britain.
We're based in Britain.
Yeah.
It's more than just the apocalypse, because as I say, the story is fiction, but I wanted to incorporate elements in it that are real. Now, the whole point of it being called #Survival, like with many stories and many films, if you're a Bond fan, for example, most of the time you watch the movie, and at some point within the movie, somebody will say the title.
Yeah.
Due to a kill.
Die another day.
Die another day, Mr. Bond. Yeah, whatever. So I wanted the title to be in there. So Tom does mention the title, and then you'll discover why this is called #Survival. However, because he needs to get back to home, and he faces all the challenges that presents itself. So we have lots of different variables that occur. And of course, let's take the apocalyptic side of it. An event occurs, which I wanted to create a scenario where an event is worldwide. It affects the whole of the planet. And at the same time, from the fictional side, I know everybody loves a good zombie romp, having zombies going around, zombie apocalypse.
When you think of post-apocalypse, one of the first things you think of is zombies.
Zombie apocalypse. And so I wanted to put that element in there, but I wanted to make the element something that is, again, scientifically, it might be on the edge of science, but scientifically possible. So if you want to call our pseudo element, which is a zombie element, they're not zombies, people are not zombies, but have that kind of threat. Yeah. So groups of people that are a threat to our main character, to prevent him getting back home, to have an obstacle to overcome. They're in it, but what's changed them, what's created the situation that those individuals are in, is based on current science. There are a few articles around of recent times, and I've basically taken upon scientific discoveries, pushing things forward, that I could say, well, hey, that sounds great, but what if it goes wrong? What would be the ramifications, how that would affect people? So we have an apocalyptic event which causes the whole collapse of society as we know it, combined with other terrible outcomes that aren't straight away from day one obvious. These are things that occur progressively. Just like if you were in a disaster zone, for whatever reason. Jack, name a kind of a disaster.
A tsunami.
Yeah, tsunami, okay. Volcanic eruption.
So
anything like that, where unfortunately people lose their lives on a mass scale. And of course, what can occur given a period of time, not necessarily that long a period of time, but we start having bodies lying around, decaying, that can then produce diseases, infection,
there's a ripple
pollution.
effect.
There's a ripple effect. So from day one, from when this starts, there is going to be this continuing ripple effect, and our main character Tom has to face these things and overcome them. Now, part of it is because as a writer, some of my personal interests are bushcraft, survivalism, and prepping.
Can you expand on that?
Well,
I've heard of the first two.
Okay, so have you ever heard of Doomsday Preppers? There are different shows around, so I'm not promoting any of them. But unfortunately for me, somebody who does enjoy prepping, most of the time preppers are portrayed in the media, or when they have some of these shows where they're showing preppers, as being quite on the fringe, quite mad people who are building bunkers, arming themselves to the teeth.
To prepare for an apocalypse.
An apocalypse, whatever that happens to be. However, to me, that's not what prepping's about. Prepping is basically insurance. So if you have a house, then most people have house insurance. And if you don't have house insurance and your house burns down, you lose your house and you've got nothing. You might have house insurance, but if you didn't have contents insurance, you've lost all that. Or the situation where you might have insurance, but you're underinsured. So you've discovered that actually everything that's the contents of your home, you were woefully underinsured, and you've come out at the end of that disastrous occurrence. Your house has been flooded or, as I say, burnt to the ground. And because you're underinsured, you've only got a small proportion of what you've lost. Prepping is like that. Now, human beings have prepped for thousands of years because it's all about, say, for example, the simplest type of prepping is to gather food during the bountiful months of the year, storing it for the winter to see you through to the summer. So
which is an animal sort of instinct, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's prepping. So it doesn't have to be crazy. I'm going to buy bazookas and put barbed wire up and everything else. It's just prepping is an insurance in case something occurs, such as, say there was a power outage, or say wherever you happen to be living, and in this instance in the UK, if there was a natural disaster or something, that you've got provisions that can see you through.
So this Tom character is in that community. He's a prepper.
There's Tom and there's his wife, who's called Megan, or Meg for short, and they, as a couple who have been preppers, they may well be people who store things and prepare. As I always say personally myself, and this is kind of the ethos for Tom and Megan, it's best to hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And as I say, that could just be simply, you don't have to have enough food and provisions in your home to last you out through an apocalypse. You don't have to have enough food or provisions or medical supplies to see you through a year or even 6 months. But it might be that you just want to make sure that you've got enough provisions in your home that if the power goes out, then, and I think there was a power outage in the east of England a year or so ago where a couple of power stations, I think it was a lightning strike, a couple of power stations went down and several million houses, boom, no power. So of course that cuts out all of your modern tech, no computers, tablets, phones for as long as the charge will last on them.
Just Wi-Fi in general will probably go down.
Exactly, which will probably send everybody crazy. I think there's a saying that we're either, sort of like 3 meals away from civil unrest. And of course, if you live in an environment, you live in a house or an apartment flat where you can only cook because you have electricity. Let's just say you're in the middle of winter and all your heating is dependent on electricity. Your fridges and freezers go down. So if you were in a situation where even you lost power for a couple of days, that could be quite disastrous to a lot of people. Yeah. And so therefore prepping is, even on the smallest scale, it's just making sure that you've got that insurance.
Get you through for a few days.
Exactly. And my wife and myself, we like to think that we enjoy prepping to a certain degree, not crazy, but whatever we prep for, it's prepping for our retirement, if you like, because it means that if you get to be 65 plus and you've retired, that, well, if needs be, you're never going to get hungry, you're never going to be cold, everything is fine. So prepping isn't being mad, it's just about a little bit of insurance that most people don't think about.
So it sounds as if this character is based on yourself and your same interests.
Yeah, I've drawn an awful lot of experience that I've had over the years. So I'm in my mid-50s anyway, so my passion for bushcraft, woodlaw, survivalism stems from when I was a kid. Things my father taught me. Back in those days, it certainly was camp. It wasn't glamping, as they call it these days. It was basic, but such fun, being out in the woodlands and enjoying things. And so part of the key push for #survival is to make sure that our character Tom, from the prepping perspective, when this apocalypse occurs, prior to that, because Tom and Meg have plans. Prepping plans. So if I put it to you, Jack, I mean, there's a lot of terminologies within the prepping community, such as to bug in or to bug out, or to have a EDC, an everyday carry bag with a small amount of emergency things in it. Again, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that you're any kind of nutcase, because a lot of people quite sensibly would have what you call an EDC, everyday carry, in their car. For example, if you were stuck in, not that we have that much snow where we are at the moment in England with global warming, unfortunately, but say you were stuck in a snowdrift on a motorway and you've been there several hours. You know that within your EDC, you've probably got a couple of bottles of water, you've got some snacks, you've got a blanket, you've got things there that
just to get you through the...
get you through.
Yeah.
Or it might be that you've come off the road in a back lane somewhere and you're waiting on a recovery team to come and get you, but you've got the facility to make sure you've got food, water and warmth till you're rescued. So these are very sensible little things, and that's insurance. So our characters in the story have already discussed, well, what would the scenario be if there was an emergency and they were apart?
Yeah.
What would they do? And then part of that plan is that if they're away from home, they would go back home. So they would look to bug in.
So this is point B.
That's right. So if we take where Tom starts his journey,
Point A.
point A, when this apocalyptic occurrence occurs, unfortunately for Tom, it's way up north.
Okay.
Where point B, being his home, is in the south of England.
A long way from Meg.
A long way from Meg. Now, because all communications have gone out, because you've already had a plan, he himself hopes that his wife, wherever she is, she's going to do the same thing. She's going to head back home.
Yeah.
Therefore, Tom's doing the same, and this is his journey home. But along the way, as we've already discussed, he has lots and lots of problems, lots of issues. But what I want to incorporate in this story, which is going to be brought out episode after episode after episode.
I was going to ask how you were formatting.
Yeah. So this is an episodic
count.
So, you listen to the first episode, the second, and so on and so on. So you can follow his journey. And
like a journal type.
He is basically making a journal of his experiences.
Yeah.
Which is something else that he's agreed with his wife beforehand, that if anything happened, and wherever they are, in order to make a record of what occurs, they will both make an audio journal of their experiences.
Which is what we're listening to.
Yeah, this is what we're listening to. And it's presented to you in a format which is basically Tom recounting on almost literally a day-to-day basis of what's occurred.
So he's in these predicaments.
He's in these predicaments. So from the onset, now you say, okay, how's he going to do this? Because the power network is down, etc., etc. Well, as I say, it's based in the sort of here and now. So he's got his mobile phone, and everybody, or most people these days, I certainly do, have a mobile charger, which will probably last me a good 6 charges on my phone. No mobile network, but what I could do is use my phone, or anybody could do this, just use it as a voice recorder.
Yeah.
If you're not using it for video or anything like that, sapping the power in it, you've got a huge amount of time that you can make an audio journal. Turn the phone on, record, turn the phone off.
He's using it for that sole purpose.
The sole purpose is to record his audio journey, his audio journal back to his home.
Yeah.
Now, what's exciting for me, on top of all the fact that we have the apocalyptic event, that zombie element.
Yeah.
But they're not zombies.
But I suppose in a way, we're discovering these zombies, in quotations, through Tom's eyes as well.
Well, okay, you've got scavengers. Okay, there are scavengers in it. These are people that are not affected by the events that are unfolding. They are everyday people like you and me, but they are coping in themselves with the situation. Yeah, and if they haven't got any backup plan, they've got no supplies, the whole network of everything has collapsed, emergency services, military has fallen apart. The only people they've got to rely on is themselves. So you're relying on human nature. It might be some people want to help and be kind to people, but other people, if you like, scavengers, will go for anything they can get.
And I suppose if he's a survivalist, as you say, he'll have items that people will want, are desirable for people.
He'll have items, but he'll know how to use items. And this is one factor that I wanted to put into this, is the realism of the techniques he uses to survive on his journey.
Okay.
So being a practical prepper, he has already started. He's got a minimum of supplies with him because he has an EDC, an everyday carry bag, with him in his vehicle. But that may well have things like a water filter in it. It might have limited snacks, some fresh water, tools.
As you say, he's not prepared for years worth of survival. It's just a couple of hours.
I mean, we're talking about characters here where normally, being where they live in the south of England, that if they're apart, they're probably only a few miles apart, 50 miles. 100 miles maybe at a push, depending on, because of what their everyday jobs are like.
Yeah.
So they're never that far away. It just so happens the unfortunate occurrence is that this has happened when he is several hundred miles away from home.
Yeah.
And, of course, everybody relies on satellite navigation. That's gone. There is no sat-nav. Thankfully, for Tom, he has a map of the UK in his bag.
Or his carry a physical map.
That's it. It's got a physical map. How many people will do that these days?
Yeah.
I mean, these days, you'll find people that can't use an old-style telephone. They look at it and go, how on earth am I meant to make a phone call on that when you stick your finger in the dial and turn the dial individual numbers?
It is crazy how mobile phones have taken over
I had a situation not so long ago where some friends were around the house, and I think it was a tin of beans, doing dinner, and, do you want to open the tin of beans? And the person just stood there looking baffled. It was because the tin opener that we've got, lever action 1, 2 levers, you just crimp it on the top and then turn the handle. Yeah. They don't own one.
Oh.
They don't own a tin opener like that. In fact, what they had is an electric tin opener underneath the counter on the kitchen cabinet. So they just stick the can in it and it goes and
they
cuts the top off.
Wow.
So suddenly being presented with, can you just open that tin of beans?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, you've given me this thing, but I have
alien
absolutely
to me.
no idea what to do with it. And then going further back, if you've ever used a good old traditional tin opener on, say, a Swiss Army knife, a lot of people, they probably look at it and think it's a bottle opener. So suddenly people are thrown into a situation where everyday things they take for granted
are gone.
Yeah. And it's, what do I do?
It's like losing your left arm nowadays, isn't it?
When it comes to doing bushcraft survivalist, you want shelter, you want water, clean water, you want food, you want warmth, fire, how to make it. I think it's the Aborigines used to say that if you can make fire, so doing a bow drill or a hand drill, it doesn't matter where you are, you carry the fire within you.
Yeah.
The ability to do that, which is really such a basic human skill.
It's been passed down as well.
It's been passed down for thousands of years that most people probably wouldn't know how to do it. So, because I have a great passion for bushcraft, woodlaw, survival skills, that when you listen to these episodes, when Tom is presented with a situation, he might start off with certain accoutrements that are going to help him, but he may well lose those. In fact, he does. Yeah. So let's just throw one thing in there. He has a water filter. They're quite common these days. You can go on most online companies and buy straightforward water filters. There's one that I think is called a Life Straw, and it will last you for a good 12 months. And a lot of people use them for backpacking around the world. So if you're going off to the Far East, you don't know whether you should drink the water or not. If you've got a Life Straw filter, you can just literally stick it in the water source you're going to use. A lot of them, you can attach them to an empty bottle. So you just fill that up with water, attach it to the bottle, squeeze the bottle, out the other end, clean water.
Yeah.
Fantastic things. Very cheap as well. Not if you haven't got one.
And you can't go on online shopping.
You can't go online shopping,
Amazon,
exactly.
The Amazon guide.
Exactly. So we're in a situation where you've got somebody who, they may have had that facility, they lose that facility, but we need to now get fresh water, because if you go and make yourself ill...
Yeah, and I imagine they didn't know much about this apocalypse as what's spreading as well, so obviously you can't really take a chance on drinking.
You can't take a chance, but if you've got to make a water filter, then the idea being is that within the episodes, it would be presented, this is how I made the water filter. This is the procedure I went to. These are the things I used to do this.
Yeah.
But the person who's listening to it will know that these are actual techniques that are proven to work. I always tell anybody that I'm helping out when I'm demonstrating firelighting, etc., is one of the key things you should remember is 2 is 1, 1 is none. So wherever you go, you should always look to have 2 ways to light fire, because if you lose one, you've still got one.
Yeah.
It's like having if you've got a knife for bushcraft. If you have a knife, you're in a survival situation, if you've got 2 and you break or lose one, you've still got one. But whenever you've only got one of something, once it's gone.
It's gone, yeah.
It's gone. But then the key to it is, when it comes to bushcraft and survival, the key is knowledge.
Yeah.
It's the ability to go right back to basics. If you need a knife, you can use a flint. Or in our modern life, you might be able to find a broken bottle, use some broken glass, use a piece of sharp metal. When you're in this kind of situation, you need to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And that's about the knowledge in your head. You can go out and buy the most expensive bushcraft axes and knives and water filters and backpacks and it's what they like to call sleep systems and all sorts. But when it boils down to it, when everything is stripped down, if you haven't got those things, or as you say, you don't know how to use them properly,
they're useless.
They're useless. So Tom's journey, he's facing actual physical issues, problems. He needs to feed himself, keep himself warm, keep him, to be able to stay out of trouble. He's presented with violence and disaster and how he gets around that. And the scavengers, they're out there because they don't have practical skills. They're bands. They are trying to just get what they can get off other people. And again, I'll say it again, this zombie element, which I don't want to give too much away at this point.
And I suppose when you mentioned the ripple effect as well, Tom is experiencing this ripple effect firsthand, isn't he? He's seeing all of these things culminate into the post-apocalyptic world that he's going to live in.
Exactly.
So you mentioned obviously the post-apocalyptic world. Is there any inspiration you've drawn for the post-apocalyptic world? Is it purely films and TV, or is it something?
No. I mean, a lot of films themselves have pulled upon obviously outlandish apocalypse. Well, not outlandish, but I mean, for example, let's take War of the Worlds. Obviously, this is aliens coming from Mars. Day of the Triffids, an alien plant which infests the Earth, etc., etc. So they're kind of a little bit more on the extreme. What I wanted to stick with, like the survival skills, which are practical, I wanted to make the situation that Tom finds himself in also based on kind of scientific fact, things that are probable. Yeah. So, for example, I drew upon, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Carrington event at all.
I have not.
That was a solar storm that hit the Earth in 1859. Now, the sun is always having solar eruptions, sending out solar flares, and on occasions it can have, and for all those scientific people out there, please, by all means, if you want to make it more clear, you can put your comments down underneath, and I encourage you to do so, in case I get anything wrong. But every so often there might be a huge solar flare which sends out a pulse of charged plasma.
Okay.
Now, there's our little planet that's orbiting the sun, and in 1859, I've not got my phone with me, so I can't Google this. I think a similar thing happened maybe in 1974. Definitely in 1859, an amateur astronomer called Carrington noted this, hence why it's called the Carrington effect, but a plasma storm from the sun hit the Earth. So these things can occur, but it doesn't always mean it's going to be a problem for the Earth, because the Earth's not always going to be in the same target zone. Yeah. But on this occasion, the Earth and this highly charged plasma both met within the solar system, so solar charge rams into the Earth. And back in 1859, it caused in America the telegraph system to overload. Some of the wires, some of the cables became so charged that operators using the telegraph system noted that they were still sending messages even though they're disconnected from the batteries.
So they'd stored all this energy.
So the actual energy was stored within the actual network itself. Yeah. It melted down networks, things exploded, all sorts of different occurrences occurred, it overloaded. Yeah. Now, what's important or interesting about this, if a similar charged plasma storm hit the Earth now, because we have such a fragile infrastructure, let's just for a moment just say, yes, our lives on a daily basis are very fragile, the system, the network that we rely on.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so if a charge hit the Earth, it would no doubt destroy, I think NASA estimated that the damage that would occur would go into the trillions. It would literally destroy satellites. It would knock out Earth-based electrical grids.
Because we're so reliant on it.
But it also led me on to, if you've never heard of the cascade effect, I think the film Gravity may have played upon that kind of thing. But it's a theory that's been around where if you have small interstellar objects, small meteorites, etc., if they were to hit a satellite orbiting the Earth and destroyed that satellite would break up, sending out hundreds or thousands of pieces of shrapnel that themselves are travelling at thousands of miles per hour, which would hit other satellites, and that whole cascade effect would literally knock out all of the satellites, or the majority of them, depending on what distance they're set from the Earth, would go down, mobile phone networks go down, all these things that would occur. It would have this knock-on effect. And these are realities that we actually really do face.
And as you say, it's so fragile, isn't it? One thing it's so can
fragile.
Cause that much.
If we found ourselves, as humanity found itself in a situation where the cascade effect occurred, then this would also mean you've got a shroud of shrapnel, which is basically buzzing around. There's the Earth now completely surrounded by a layer of shrapnel, which is travelling at like bullets around the Earth. The problem is you can't then launch any satellites or launch to get through that. It would be very, very disastrous exactly for humanity in the way that we conduct ourselves at the moment with the different networks we have. So if you combine something like the cascade effect with the Carrington effect, often you may have seen in the news where we've had close flybys from objects in space.
Yeah.
They're not always detected. Anybody listen to this? Don't worry, I'm not trying to make you worried out there. I'm not trying to make you worried out there. But if you had an object traveling through the solar system and it collided with the Earth, if it was a big enough one, you'd get basically an extinction level event would occur.
Yeah.
Which would probably just wipe out pretty much most of the life on Earth. I haven't gone for that. I needed to make sure that the apocalyptic event would affect the Earth.
Yeah, but not to a disastrous level.
It would reduce everything down to a basic level where you haven't got power to rely on, you haven't got communications, and okay, you'd still have emergency services, you'd still have military, etc., to perhaps organise things and help people out as best they can. They would be very stretched, but that's why I brought in the element, if you like, and I keep saying zombies, but that kind of element, because that contagion, if you like, which you will discover is based on scientific theory at the moment, that's what causes all those networks to break down.
Yeah. So it's more of a gradual deal.
I mean, okay, it just so happens, if you listen to this now, we've got the coronavirus situation we find ourselves in is totally coincidental that we're talking about this now. But if we look at that, and again, comment below if I haven't got my facts right on this, but this coronavirus, I think the gestation period is something like 5 days before people start to feel the symptoms from it. So modern day international travel, that's why we've suddenly found that people moving out of ground zero where it occurred, now it's spreading around the planet because
people visit different countries every day.
100, 200 years ago, it would probably be still contained in the area it was because people are not able to just get on a flight and in several hours be the other side of the world.
And even then it was rats getting on ships to go to different countries.
Exactly, things like that. So, but the coronavirus that is prevalent at the moment shows you how quickly something can spread if it's human-to-human contact. And what I can tell you is that in the stories of #survival, that it is airborne. Now, if you do a little bit of research online, an airborne virus or contaminant can get around the world within 36 hours.
Wow.
So if you combine that with an extraterrestrial occurrence, which causes disaster globally, and then the release of this contagion, then it would spread not immediately, but over the period from when the initial apocalyptic event happens, a couple of days later, or wherever you are in the world, however near you are to where ground zero is, then the effects will start to play part. So we now have this apocalyptic scenario. We have one man who's desperate to get home.
Who luckily has the knowledge, as you say.
He has the knowledge.
Yeah.
He has the fortitude. Will he get home? We don't know.
#survival.
#survival. So that's where we are. You will follow Tom on his journey. So you'll have the adventure, the excitement, and the practical survival skills that he uses to get him on his way.
So on a more technical basis, when you're writing this story, are you writing it word for word, or are you kind of, as you say, you're going to make it like a real life audio journal? No. So are you writing like a sort of bullet points?
Yeah, it's going to be presented in that kind of in a more realistic way, so that Tom is recounting this, he's recording this. There will be a certain amount of editing to it, if you like, but we wanted to make sure that #survival was more natural in its presentation. So we're still looking at it from his perspective, from where our character is recounting what's occurred. Suddenly out of an alleyway, things charged at me and I had to run and I tripped and I fell and I did this and this occurred and whatever. He's recounting this, but it's going to be in a less constructed format.
So it's not improvised in a way, but it's kind of off your own.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that it felt as if you were listening to somebody's journal.
Yeah.
If you were asked to sit down with a recorder and record your day, you might and R and
there would be natural sort of pauses.
Yeah, there would be natural pauses. We want to also incorporate the fact that what you're listening to is a recording. Each episode is a recording. So when you're listening to it, it's a recording that has been made at a certain time of the day. Say Tom has got to the end of a day and he's got himself into shelter. He's set for the night and he feels safe. I can now record the next part of my journal, that he can record that. But you would hear, if he was in a forest, for example, you might hear owls. If it's raining, it probably rain.
So there's an ambience to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's other things incorporated in this, for example, because he's going from the north to the south, and there are natural hazards and hazards that have occurred because of the apocalyptic events that surround the story, that there are also things such as wildlife parks, zoos.
So as you say, it's based in Britain.
Yes.
You're going from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Are you using real geographical?
Exactly. So if he's out there and he's in the wilds and he's trying to avoid other scavengers, he's trying to avoid the zombies. So what I can say is that I'm terming them ferals, because these people have become feral-like. They've lost their humanity and have become working on basic instincts.
Okay.
So they become bestial.
Yeah.
Rather than it being, I've bitten you and you're suddenly going to become one of the undead. Because when it comes to zombies, you can have zombies that have become zombies through contact with, say, man-made chemicals. You can have
religious reasons.
You kind of spiritual zombies where
the
dead have risen because of some kind of
prophecy
or voodoo or something. But these are real people, but the contagion has had an effect on them that has made them go feral, but it hasn't affected everybody.
Okay.
But
will we go into more detail?
We'll go into more detail about that as Tom discovers it.
Okay.
Because he will meet people on his journey, and they're characters that he may well be telling you about that he's met, and the information that they have given him, which has then enlightened him more to what's actually been going on, because what he knows is limited.
Yeah.
Right from day one, it's limited. He only knows so much up until the point where the communications go down. And then anything after that point is any information he gleans from perhaps FM or AM radio that he's come across, or people that he might meet that aren't trying to kill him or to try and rob him of what he may or may not have.
So he has to be cautious as well to approach people.
Well, you would be.
Yeah.
I mean, if I put you in that scenario, it's a case of life and death. You might be presented by a person or people that are really nice. They would want to help you, but how would you know?
Exactly, yeah.
You might present yourself to them to your ruin.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult situation to find yourself in. Trust.
Yeah.
Humanity. How people will react to you. Or can you trust them? Can they seem to be really nice, but actually they've got a completely different agenda?
They've got a sub-plan.
So we have the scavengers, we have the ferals, and
the geographical locations we were saying.
That's right. The locations are exactly what we are drawing upon. So although the satellite network is down and Tom is relying on the map that he has, and of course roads, etc. around Britain, like in any country, you've got road signs, etc. But do you want to go near necessarily to towns where by this time diseases and things might have started to fester?
Yeah.
Do you go on main roads where other scavengers or people might be that could...
They'll use that to get around the country.
Yeah, because they don't have any other way of navigating. So you're going into a situation where you might be putting yourself at risk. Whereas you might be saying, well, if I stay away from the roads and I go across country, that's my better option.
Yeah.
But how do you do that if you can't navigate? So what we're looking at is with his journey, we're using Google Maps to look at locations, real locations, to look down at those locations to see real placements of the topography, what's there, what's available, what may or may not be of use, where he could be, and to put real places, to put realism in his journey.
And that makes it so much more real for the listener as well.
So we've got, you might find that he's passing by where you live.
Yeah.
Through where you live, where you know a place, so you can relate to that story. Because you say, I know that there is a farm there. Maybe we might change names as we go through things, but we know that there is an old ruin, an old castle, a particular wood forest, a lake. We can associate where these real places are. On top of that, the real bushcraft and survival skills combined with the fictional but
very real
threats that could be in this story.
And everyone's thought about what they would do if that sort of event happened, and they always think about their immediate location, don't they? So if you're thinking of your immediate location,
some people will say they'll bug out. So for example, if you're in a city or a town and everything's going mayhem and chaos and people are looting, we live in a society where we don't really have guns. Obviously, we've got very limited guns in the UK, which is not a bad thing in my opinion. But if it's a case of survival, a lot of people will automatically go to plan A will be to bug out, to get from where they're living to a safe zone. Whereas the opposite is to say, well, wherever I am, I happen to live, say, for example, out in the country, and I'm going to, wherever I am, bug in because that's my safe zone and that's where all my supplies are.
Yeah, and Tom and Meg have this plan down.
Tom and Meg have got a plan. That's their plan, and they stick with it. Because it would be no good if Tom was away from home or Meg was away from home and their other half says in their head, well, I don't know where Tom is. I'll go out and see if I can look for him, because that's ridiculous. Both of you might miss each other.
Yeah, it's such a, yeah.
So you have to have a plan, and the basic plan is to say, whatever happens, we're going to be back to our bug-in place,
like a rendezvous,
or to our bug-out place.
Yeah.
And so that's the plan. They have a plan.
So without giving too much away, we've heard a lot about Tom. Can you tell us any more about Meg?
Well, of course, Meg is a story in herself. All the time Tom is trying to get home, what's happening with Meg?
She's, as you say, she's recording this same audio journal.
Is she? Tom doesn't know if she's dead.
Ooh.
Tom doesn't know if she's become a feral.
He's just going to this
Tom
place.
doesn't know what's happened. All he can rely on is the love for his wife, his need to get home, and the hope, as I say, always hope for the best, prepare for the worst, the hope that if she's okay, that she's sticking to the plan.
She's done the same, yeah.
And that drive that he will see her again pushes him on.
Yeah, and I suppose...
But we don't know about Meg. Not yet.
Yeah, and we'll explore that emotion as well in the journal.
We'll explore that, yes, exactly. Because, like any human being, Tom will have low points.
Yeah.
As much as there might be high points, there's going to be a lot of low points.
I can imagine there's not going to be many high points when you're living in a
for the moment, the focus is on Tom.
Yeah.
But there is a whole other side to the story, because with Megan, the day it occurs, she has her own story.
Okay.
If she is there, if she is alive, not saying she is, if in this scenario, let's say she is well and has survived, and she is sticking to the plan, she will be making her own journal away from Tom.
And she'll be experiencing the same ripple effect, but in a different location.
Different location, different scenario.
She'll have different tasks.
Whereas Tom would be going from A to B to get home. Her drive would be to stay at home and hope that her husband, Tom, if he's still alive, because she won't know, if he'll make it back. And from that perspective, if she knows where Tom is starting his journey, if she knows, well, Tom was there roughly around this time on that day, you would be able to calculate roughly if an individual, say, for example, is on foot or managing to use a variety of different transport, etc. But if you went for the longest period and say they're on foot and they've got to cover that distance on foot only, you'd expect them to maybe do that in X amount of time. And she would need to therefore make sure that she can survive for that period of time to be sure that he's able to make it home.
Exactly, yeah. So there's that element as well of sort of not knowing and whether or not to carry on. And
that's another story, as they say.
Don't want to give too much away. So going back again to a technical level, how long do you think these journal entries will be? Will they be varying length, or will they be... There'll be short ones.
I think they'll probably vary in length as we start to roll them out. I'd like to think a good 15 to 20 minute slot is a nice chunk for people to get into. And again, taking it from that approach that if you were sitting there and you were recording the events of your day,
which I imagine is a very eventful day.
So even today, you woke up this morning, you foraged for your breakfast in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You had to light a fire by plugging the kettle in and making yourself a cup of tea. And then you decide, right, you're going to have a shower and you're going to get dressed and then you're going to come over to the Dungeon Sound Studio at ZWP. Then how long would that take you to put down?
Yeah, you would and ah, as you say, and
you would you would pause. You might find that you need to backtrack on what you've said because you suddenly remember that you've forgotten something.
Yeah.
It might be that you are tired and you really just, Yeah, I think to answer your question, you're looking probably about 15, 20 minute episodes.
Okay. And how far are you in the process of writing?
The whole structure is well rehearsed as to what we're doing.
Okay, so you know exactly what's happening.
We know where Tom starts, we know where he ends, we know his route in between. The finer details are literally being written episode to episode because we want it to be developing its...
You want it to be naturally growing, don't you?
Yeah, we want the story to grow. So, for example, when an episode has been completed, it might be that the man in the gallery says, hey, what if such and such occurs?
So it's organic in a way
That's the word. Yeah. That's it. It's organic in its structure. So you've got a huge amount of the actual story, the trials that Tom faces, the skills he has to employ, they are all organised and set out. If you've got your everyday carry bag and your facility of lighting fire and filtering water and you've lost it or it's been stolen, you've been attacked and it's been taken away from you, then all these other things you need to put into place. So it's, as you say, organic as it develops.
Yeah. Wow. I'm really interested in this. I really want to listen to as many of these episodes as possible to see how...
I'll say #survival will be coming out shortly. The next thing that's going to be coming out is a live action trailer. So keep your eye out for that. That should be just a nice little item just to wet the whistle, so to speak. Okay, so if you wanted to get involved with Hashtag Survival, the Hashtag Survival stories, the episodes, are all free. So anybody can listen to them. But of course, being that they're free, we've still got to produce them, we've still got to make them, which isn't free. And so we can only do this with you, the listeners' support. And if you want to help us out with this project and donate to it, if you go to the Zak Wylde Productions website, which is www.zakwyldeproductions.com, find Hashtag Survival, and there's a button you can press there to donate money to help us produce further episodes to this amazing story. If you donate £10, then you will get a credit on that episode that you've donated to help to produce. Or if you donate £25, then not only do you get a credit, but you will also get an exclusive Hashtag Survivalist t-shirt that will be sent out to you. So you can become one of the followers of Hashtag Survival and become a Hashtag Survivalist.
Okay, so we all look for your support on that. I, for one, will probably donate some money. I want to hear even more.
Well, it's a great project. I'm really looking forward to really getting stuck into it. And once it gets rolling, then it will be a continuing story that goes along.
Absolutely.
And really, just love all the concepts in it, because we are looking at actual things that could cause an apocalypse, could cause world catastrophe, and actual bushcraft and survival skills for our main character to get through.
Yeah, so, and the fact that it's a journal just makes it so much more real, doesn't it?
Exactly. Okay, Jack, I think it's time that we go over to our usual social media roundup. And this week we are focusing on all those wonderful people out there that are subscribing to us and following us on YouTube. We've had over 840 views on YouTube already, which is fantastic, since that our Zak Wylde Productions YouTube channel hasn't been running that long. We really have a goal now to push forward to 1,000 subscribers. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to us on your phone, your tablet, your laptop, computer, wherever you happen to be, go over to YouTube, find Zak Wylde Productions channel, and hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, and that also allows us to create more content for you guys.
That's it, with your support. More content, more support. We can produce more and more things that you can listen to.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned earlier, to become a Hashtag Survivalist, you can visit www.zakwyldeproductions.com. Just search for Hashtag Survival. You can donate via PayPal and card. Would you like to remind people what the benefits are of donating?
Yeah, if you go on there and you become a Hashtag Survivalist, you can either get a credit on the episode that you help to support, or if you go for the slightly bigger donation of £25, not only will you get a credit, but you will also get sent out an exclusive Hashtag Survivalist t-shirt.
Thank you very much. You can also keep up to date with all the projects that Zak Wylde Productions are producing on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. You can listen to this podcast as well as previous episodes on YouTube, Podbean and Spotify.
As well as following us directly on the Zak Wylde Productions website, which is www.zakwyldeproductions.com, which really just leaves us one last thing to do. Cue the jingle!